Welcome back to another episode of the Comedy Writers Group. My name is Marcel Blanch-de, your intrepid host. Back for another week. The Comedy Writers Group is a podcast where we get into the weeds of all things comedy, stand-up, being a comedian, being a comedic screenwriter, anything that involves doing comedy, we want to talk about it. We want to demystify the world of comedy to make it a little less mysterious, a little bit more welcoming, and to make the invisible stuff a little bit more visible. So the comedians out there who are burgeoning, the fledglings, the folks that are on their road to becoming professional comedians, or just the comedy curious, can find this whole universe a little bit less overwhelming. I'm here to be your comedy guide. My name is Marcel. I've been a comedian for more than, 13 years now. Started in Adelaide, now live in Melbourne after Sydney for 10 years. On today's episode, Lara Ricote is on the show. If you'll really appreciate my Spanish accent, I love hearing Lara say her first name. It is delightful. Lara, if you don't know her, is a comedian. She is from Mexico originally. Now she is based in the Netherlands, and she's got an interesting backstory. She's a fascinating person and just so gosh darn funny. I recently watched her special that she put on YouTube, which is her special from 2022. And just to give a sense of Lara's personality, this is how she's described the special in the YouTube caption. Hi, this show won Best Newcomer at Ed Fringe 2022, if that means something to you. It starts kind of bad, but it gets better as it goes along, so just give it a little bit of time. Thank you for watching it. Would so appreciate you sharing with absolutely anyone, actually. Thank you to everyone who helped me and to anyone who shares it and likes it and so on. So I really suggest that you check this out. I will link it in the show notes, and I will challenge Lara on saying it does not start out kind of bad. What I love about it, and as I explained in this episode, I love that it feels like I'm going to a festival show, which is delightful, is absolutely delightful. Lara is, I was so thrilled to do this episode over Zoom. So the audio is not as crisp as it is right now in the studio, but I think it's still solid. I think you'll still have an excellent time. We cover so many different categories of things. Lara is hard of hearing, so we talk about that world, and also I learn about that world because I don't know. I don't really know. I'm not an expert in these things. So what was convenient and very handy is that one of our members, Nicole, is part of this world. Nicole's hard of hearing. So I said to Nicole, who had expressed interest in our mid-year survey where I asked our members, what would you like content-wise and what would you like more of? What would you, give us your feedback. Nicole wanted content for a deaf audience. So if everything goes to plan, I will put this episode out as a video that will be captioned, which will hopefully be more accessible, which we also get stuck into in this episode is talking about accessibility. But one thing worth mentioning as well that we also get into is talking about that idea of identity and who we are and what we talk about on stage. And what I think was a fascinating avenue that we went down was not making it one's whole identity, when at the same time, quite cheekily, Lara has called her show that she's put on YouTube, a 2022 Ed Fringe show, Girl LATNX Deaf, spelled GRL, and then LATNX, LATNX/Def, DEF, to just sort of go, here's 3 things about me. And I'll let Lara explain that more, but it's interesting to sort of go, okay, here are 3 things. Here are 3 things. And you go, oh, okay, so since your show is named that, do you want to, then this is the sort of the instinct of a lot of interviewers and media types, if I may put myself in that category, is to go, okay, so if you put that as your banner, is it your whole deal? Is it your agenda? Is it your mission to sort of make these things your flagship? And as we learn, Lara's mission is to be as funny as possible to as many people as possible. Well, that was my takeaway. And what makes our identity comes along with that. I've done sessions with people, just as an aside, because I think this is an interesting thing to explore, is I've done one-on-ones. I run one-on-one sessions with comedians who want to develop their material, get feedback, or work on shows, and I work as a director. If this is the first time that we're meeting, lovely to meet you. And I'll have comedians say, oh, well, this material is for a queer night. So can you tell me if this fits the brief? Is this material queer enough? Or I've had comedians go, oh, this material is for a disabled comedy night. So it's people with a disability who are doing comedy on stage. Does it fit the brief? And I've said to them, just the fact that you are someone with a disability on stage, you're already fitting the brief. Just the fact that you are someone who is from the queer community on stage, you're already fitting the brief. You are doing your thing. So I say that to people, who may be wary of, what am I supposed to be? What am I supposed to be on stage? And I think me and Lara had some interesting conversations around that idea of, who am I and what am I doing here, and how do I sell myself to an audience? What do I need to tell them to access who I am? What do I need to tell them to get to the comedy that I want to share? What defines my comedy? What is my voice as I'm still developing it? Lara's in her 20s. She's still developing it, even though she's had some really amazing early success. She's still exploring stuff. We get stuck into some clowning areas as well, which I think is really, she's got some beautiful takeaways in the world of clowning, which I think you'll really appreciate. But I wanted to give a shout out to Nicole, because Nicole was able to supply me with some questions around this world of the deaf community and the hard of hearing community, which I've also had to sort of determine the difference. And this is just a quick Google just to help people out that might also be coming to this uninitiated. And forgive me if Google's not, getting all the answers today, but here we go. The difference between deaf and hard of hearing. People who have hard of hearing usually communicate through spoken language and can benefit from hearing aids, cochlear implants, and other assistive devices, as well as captioning. Deaf people mostly have profound hearing loss, which implies very little to no hearing. So Lara is in the hard of hearing category. She wears a hearing aid, much like I was speaking to my uncle yesterday I was in Adelaide catching up, and he has a hearing aid and his hearing loss is quite advanced. So he needs to be, watching your lips, and us Australians need to be making the best effort we can be to be enunciating and hitting all our consonants and vowels. So, it's an intriguing world that I want to get better at. I want to learn more about accessibility, but we learn about so many different things in this episode. We talk about the Melbourne comedy scene, because Lara has come down and done the Melbourne Comedy Festival and Sydney Comedy Festival. We learn about Amsterdam comedy. There's so many things, and I think you'll really, really enjoy it. I really appreciate I really appreciate Lara making the time. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If this is your first time listening to the Comedy Writers Group podcast, we are not just a podcast, but we're also a community of comedians, largely based in Australia, but slowly, taking over the world, and people are welcome to join from any part of the world. We have the podcast, but we also have online sessions where comedians can come along and get professional mentoring from myself and professional comedians. How many times can I use the word professional in this sentence? And it's a way, as I say at the start of this episode, that the podcast and the community are here to make the world of comedy a lot less overwhelming and a lot more welcoming and a lot more encouraging of newcomers and new talent, and because it's scary out there and a lot of beautiful creative types get scared away from things. I think that's all I want to cover today. Yeah, this is sort of funny, but like I wanted to sort of say that as I'm recording this episode on Zoom at 8:00, as I just had skipped out on watching our friend Bron Lewis, who was recording her special alongside Cameron James downstairs at Stupid Old Studio. So there might be a little bit of background noise. And I'm also then juggling the questions from Nicole. And you'll have to forgive me that Nicole used what the internet tells me is the proper term of LATNX, and as Lara also used it, I said Latino at one stage when that if I read the article, is gendered male, and then Latinx is gender neutral. But then I also learned an article about how Latinx is hard to pronounce if you're part of the Latina/Latino community. So forgive me. I just want to tell Nicole that I did intend to get her question right. But I think what we're learning here, and as I learned recently, talking about these sorts of things of this nature, there's a fear. Some people get so overwhelmed with a fear of getting things wrong that they sort of turn inward or they don't try. And I want to sort of be out there going, hey guys, let's all learn together this episode. Let's learn about communities that we might not know much about. And as we learn, we get to expand our horizons. And as we learn, we get to think about all the ways that our comedy could reach different communities. And we get to think about all the ways that we might think about how our identity lends itself to comedy and how we might be able to connect with the people in our community and their community. And I think it's such a rich thing to explore. I just had a smile on my dial this entire time, so I should be trimming this intro, but I just am delighted. I'm delighted. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Keep the feedback coming. We always love to get the feedback. I'll join you at the end of the episode to welcome some new members and to congratulate and to commemorate some of our members who are joining the Legends group. And if you want to subscribe to the podcast, you will get access to some exclusive members-only episodes, including an episode all about Edinburgh Fringe. But until next time, until we next meet at the end of the episodes, enjoy this episode with Lara Ricote. Well, let's start in the world of, because you've been around. What do you sort of observe about the Australian comedy scene? Because I know you've been to Melbourne. How far have you gotten around Australia?
I wish more, but I did Melbourne and I did Sydney for only 2 days. I didn't get to do I wanted to do more, but I didn't stay for longer. It's also a long time being far away, the thing every time.
Yeah, totally.
But yeah. But
what were your observations? What were your takeaways?
I love it. People say Melbourne is quite hard. People say like Melbourne is like a kind of snobby, like the way that they watch your comedy is a bit snobby. I don't think, I had a hard time this year. Last year I had the best time of my life, but I think it was also because it was like the end of my first show and I finally had I loved it by then. I hated it for 87 times. And then I got there and then I was like, but you know what? This is what I wrote. And I like what I wrote. And I was like getting into the flow of it after so many times. And so it was, and the audiences were nice. And I felt like they weren't judging me for doing the stuff that I thought was like, I don't know if I like this stuff. I felt Melbourne, I love the city. I thought people were really cool and nice. And also I thought like young people go out to comedy, which is so great. And also people of all ages. I think it's really good to do comedy there. That was my thought 1 year ago. And then I came back this year and then I did my show and my show was a little bit weirder. Like I started a bit weirder. I think last year I was more accessible. I had long hair and I was sort of putting like little pins in it or like buns and like my vibe was more like, and then this year my vibe was more like, it was a bit stranger. And I started by not speaking, and I was like doing some snaps, and then I sing a song, and then like it was a bit more aggressive the way I came into it.
Mm-hmm.
And people started watching it instead of like being part of it.
Yeah.
And that happened in Melbourne, and it didn't happen in Sydney. And I think there was also like, yeah, I don't know if anybody had I haven't watched so many shows of the Australian comedy scene or whatever, but it felt like I had to tell people like, hey, I'm doing it on purpose to make you laugh. And then when I did that, then that was like, oh, okay, great. It was like, of course that should have been what you thought originally. But I think, I don't know, that was weird this year. And then it took me like maybe like a week and a half to get into it this year. I was suffering a little bit more in the beginning, and then I really found it during. But I was also in different phases. I think it depends on what you're bringing and like where you are in relation to it, you know, because the audience is really open. I feel like they're willing to participate. They're willing to be. I talk a lot with the crowd, and like I do like I write jokes with them, and like they were completely open from the beginning. But there was also more of like a, okay, we'll do what you need from us. And it felt like they thought I needed from them to like watch me like an art piece or something in the beginning. And
Totally.
then yeah, which was like, oh, okay, but that's good to know also, because like maybe you can kind of like make that be the case, whatever you need.
Yeah,
If you're
if the start of that is then deliberate, that I want to challenge you, I want to sort of make you uneasy at the top, I want you to not know what this is. But you're totally right. Melbourne audiences have a sophisticated palate, and maybe that's sort of a more fairer assessment than people who go, well, they're really judgy, which means that person had a bad night, and and that's the sort of excuse that they sort of left with. But and this is why, I just went to watch a live recording of people recording their stand-up sets, and there's a reason why there's a warm-up act at the top that says you guys are allowed to laugh at this, and please laugh, because audiences are otherwise extremely polite sometimes and might just go, we'll
yeah,
do what you tell us to do. And especially if you're visiting our shores and we're like, well, she's come all this way, let's be as polite as we can. And we might need
yeah,
to be
or
told, no,
this
you
type
can
of
laugh.
like, it's like no, please out. But it's exactly that. It feels like they are like they've watched a lot of stuff. They are a little bit more like, yeah, willing to be changed to what they should be doing as an audience, I guess.
Mm,
But also I was doing something that was a bit weirder, and that for me, like exactly that. Like I was doing something that was not the thing that was easy to just get into, and then I was upset that people weren't just getting into it. But it was
right.
like, hello, girl, do something more normal then in the beginning,
I
or
want
let
to,
them know.
yeah, I want to underline that idea as well. You were saying with your previous show that you'd performed it 87 times before it got to Melbourne, and I want the listeners to hear that, because so many of the new comedians who are starting out, and in Australia, you just don't, even if you're a pro comedian, getting that many runs on the board is really difficult. So new comedians are putting this pressure on themselves to have a show feel like ready and like cooked by like night one, if not night
Mm.
seven. When do you begin to how much do you like to get the runs on the board in terms of running in a new show? When do you feel like a show is feeling ready? If you'd ever even use such a term.
Yeah, I this is only my second one, and I'm about to start my third one, and like I it takes me a very with my first one, I went into Edinburgh. I probably started doing work in progresses in April of
Hmm.
2021, and I must have done like 30 work in progresses before Edinburgh. So and that was like to yeah, four people, five people. Like it wasn't like
Full
a thing that
lengths or shorter sets?
full length. Like I was
Hmm.
trying to find what the show was. So I
Hmm.
kind of had like my first show was a combination of a bunch of stuff that I had said before, where I put it together and then I did a version of it that had no theme and no nothing. And then I watched that and I was like, oh, okay. Then I talked about it with the director, which was really helpful, Deck Monroe. And he was like, oh, seems like it's this. And I was like, oh, and maybe it's that. Then I went back, I did it again with those ads. And then I kept doing that for 30 times. And he was
Hmm.
just like, do it. That was his whole thing. It was like, even if it's to three people, or to two people, or to in a studio that you rent for one person, like just do it, because the more that you do it, the more that you know what you're kind of trying to do. Because
It
the
sounds like the
show is
most
different.
obvious advice in the world, and yet not enough people take it. So I'm so glad that you're saying it, because also newer comedians need to be given permission as well as encouragement. So being told like it's okay to perform this 30 times to two people to get it's because it's rehearsal. It's the same thing an actor would do.
Yeah, it's right. Yeah, exactly. And you don't know what sometimes like the pin drops so much later than you wanted it to, but like you're because you're just kind of in repetition mode and you don't really yeah, there's something about like repeating the same thing that you kind of just forget what you're even talking about. But sometimes when you watch it back, you're like, oh, and this is a theme, or when other comics come and tell you, and they're like, wait, you're obviously talking about like this. With my first show, I didn't like I was doing some stupid tech thing where like I have this joke about like my hearing aids have Bluetooth,
Hmm.
and I was doing like this continuous thread of like, oh, sorry, like voice notes are popping into my ear. And then the audience would hear the voice notes because they would play into the mic, into the sound, whatever it's called, these speakers. And they would play into the speakers. And I couldn't explain why it was. I was just trying to find some sort of thread. And it sucked. And it sucked up to day 2 of Edinburgh, which I kept doing it and trying. And then my partner was like, why don't you take that out?
Yeah, do you
And I
still
was like,
need it?
yeah, like, why are you doing that? And I was like, oh, just because I'm doing that. I took it out. And then the show was like it was so much better because I already had something else that I had found a thread, but it was hard to like kill your darlings and like something that had taken a bunch of time to tech, you know? So I
Yeah,
didn't want to take it
it's like
out.
you put these bells and whistles into the show. Am I not going to blow the whistles? Am I not going to ring the bells?
I don't want people to see me ring the bell. Do people want to see me ring the bell? I couldn't let it go. And when I let it go, it was so much nicer. And I had done like probably 30 times with that thing in it.
Hmm.
And sometimes you just need that. It's also with that permission from somebody to be like, hey, this is bad. And you're like, right? It's bad. I don't know why I keep
I
doing
think it's
it.
also nice to be told, hey, you don't need that. Like you are enough. And that's also
Yes.
the value of an outside eye to go, you are enough. And go, no, I'm pretty sure I need to trick the audience into liking me more. So I'm going
Oh,
to keep this
totally.
tech stuff.
Yeah. That's such a big part also of like noticing what it is that you think you're a comic with. And then like, oh, no. I mean, even stuff like talking is one, you know, like that's something that sometimes people notice like, oh, maybe I don't even need to talk, which is such a crazy thing to realize.
Yeah,
And some
maybe
clowns that are
yeah,
just
exactly.
doing
All
it
the
in
power is in
silence.
my eyebrows or something.
Oh my God, I would love to realize that one day.
Tell me, let's rewind to the comedian origin story. And I want to quickly flag as well before I forget, when I was researching you, I couldn't help but notice that it's rare that if I put someone's name into Google that I'll see on their Wikipedia that their relatives also have Wikipedia links. So can we get just a sense of the family as well? Why do all your
Yes.
why are your relatives on Wikipedia?
My relatives are on Wikipedia because my mother is a soap actress in Mexico.
Right.
Soap as in telenovelas,
Mm-hmm.
as in my and she's been doing that for like 40 years or so. And my dad maybe is on Wikipedia because he was a if he is on Wikipedia, I don't know, but maybe he was
There
a
was like grandparents at least, I think, if memory
real
serves, or
no
something,
chance.
or
No
like
grandparents, no chance.
auntie or something.
Definitely my mom
Yeah, right.
and maybe my dad.
Hmm.
Maybe my dad. My dad was a TV presenter for like 2 years in Venezuela. Um, and then now he's a photographer and he does that and he's not doing any he was really bad on this on stage anyways, but he's good looking, so they put him on. And that was like, and he knows. And my mom was like she started like yeah, she went to a TV competition when she was 16, and my family's like they didn't do anything in the arts or anything, but like they were in Mexico. And my mom went to a TV presentation thing and she did a dance and she was good at it, and then she won it, and then they gave her like a commercial thing in Mexico, and then she did
Right.
that for like 5 years, and then she did soap operas, and she's been doing that for forever.
So, what was it like to grow up in that environment?
I mean, so many things that I don't think are great about it are later the best. I'm so happy that they happened. I was annoyed at them. She made us go to acting classes on Friday for like 4 hours. Like, I'm never gonna be an actress. I don't care about this. I want to be a politician.
Hmm.
I studied politics in the university here. I left because I didn't care about that, and I was like, not that's not what I'm about at all. And then of course I moved here and then found myself doing something in the arts anyways. But that was because my little sister came and she gave me the improv bug. I didn't have that
Oh
bug.
no, I'm so sorry to hear that.
Yeah. Well, apparently I love it so much. And it's my favorite thing of all time.
No, I
And
love
I mean, of
improv
course,
as well.
yeah, of course you do. Look at all the colors you're wearing. I know. I love improv as well. It's so much fun. I was 21 and I was studying politics and I was like an activist that really cared about a bunch of shit. And I do still care in somewhere inside of me, but then I found this and it was just so joyous. And I had of course done improv in my house because my mom, she's very she gamifies everything and she's very
Hmm.
fun and like, and she's an artist, but she's also like, she did do telenovelas, which is a very different type of thing. It's like they tell you the lines into your ear, you know? It's like they film hundreds of
Right.
episodes. Every day is a new episode. It's very much, it's a lot of work, also a lot of hours in it. And I never really respected it, but I did end up like coming back around to it
Mm.
now
It's
because
fascinating.
she did do it.
Has it ever been a temptation, or has it already made it into your work that it would infuse into it, whether it's something that you're going to talk about or something that informs the performance?
I think yes, I do. I mean, I tell a lot of stories. I do. There's like a big storytelling community here in Amsterdam. There's a place called the Mesrad that's like an incredible place where there's like Wednesdays and Fridays, and I'm always telling stories about my family and my um like longer ones, you know, just about my mom or whatever. So I think yeah, it's relevant to everything. I think my next hour is going to be about like my memories. Like I don't have a lot of childhood memories, but like I'm pretty sure I had a really good childhood. So it's
That's
just a
already a
really
like great first 5 minutes. Like to just that's a great hook. I'm already
well,
there.
it's yeah. Well, thank you. I thought of it the other day because I every time I talk about it, also in therapy and stuff, she's like, and what was it like? And I'm like, don't know. I just don't know. I don't know. And
And
my
yeah, interesting.
yeah,
Because I don't want to get too much deep into therapy, because then what's being repressed?
of course, who knows?
Mm.
And I mean, it's also there. Yeah, I'm not so sure yet, but I do think there's a fun thread to play with because I also lied a lot as a kid. And like, I think that there's like sometimes your memories and then your lies are like, and then sometimes you just like photos are where everything comes from that you're like, I don't even know if that's true at all. Or maybe I just saw a photo of that. But anyways, why did I say that? Because of my mom. And I think that it influenced me for sure. It influenced me, but can't remember what I was answering.
Well, let's segue neatly into Amsterdam. You're talking about the storytelling scene. We've talked about comedy in Melbourne. Tell me about comedy and performance opportunities in Amsterdam.
It's so good. I just did remember why I said it because I don't have a lot of memories. And my one of the things I did was a soap opera when I was 15. I did 30 episodes of this thing. I got killed off or whatever, the whole thing. And I saw a video of it the other day and I couldn't remember any of it. And I did
Right.
it because my mom obviously nepo babied me into that. No chance I would have done something like that. And that's why I said it.
And
Amsterdam
that'll
comedy
also
scene.
be great for the listener who is like, I can hear what you were saying.
Oh,
Finish the
for
thread.
sure. um, maybe I'm talking too fast.
No, this is great. And also, some people, I mean, it'll only be too fast for the people that listen to their podcasts on 1.25 speed, and they're going, okay, what's happening
What in the world? Um,
here?
Amsterdam comedy
Let's
scene,
talk Amsterdam.
so good. I love it here in terms of the Amsterdam comedy scene because it's new. Like it's been going probably for like 8 years that it's like become like an established thing, which is
Mhm.
so cool because it means that like when things are brought here, they really affect the scene. Like when things start here, they really affect the way that people do comedy. Um, I started like 5.5 years ago or so,
Mhm.
maybe six. Um, And when I started, there were two or three women and maybe eight or not, like 10 comics overall.
Oh,
And
wow. So it's real
it
tiny.
was, it was in
Right.
6 years ago, it was really tiny. And it was a lot of tour guides that were like, we could do like we're funny and like we could do it in English. Like there's a Dutch comedy scene and it's really like it's thriving. It's kind of like an art form. There's called cabaret and people go to school for it for like 3 years and then like
Mm.
build these shows. It's a whole thing. And they're very like have like an arc of a thing. Like they're one woman, one man shows, but theatrical and singing and dancing, some stuff, but comedy. And that's like a thing, but it doesn't mix with the English one because a lot of the people that come here are expats or like people who don't learn the language, basically people who borrow and
Mhm.
stay here and then make money and leave, which is kind of like what tends to happen in the city. It's very transitory. Um, and So a lot of people are tour guides, and so they just stay with the English people. And then they started doing a couple of comedy nights, and they started one at Mesrab, the place where I work a lot. And I did an open mic there because someone told me I should, and I was doing improv. Improv is big here because of Boom Chicago, which is like this, yeah, U.S. thing where they bring people from Second City and IO and stuff. And so there's like comedy was already here, and it's the biggest improv community in Europe because of Boom Chicago, which is crazy. And there's a lot of stuff popping up because people take courses there. They want to do their own thing and stuff. But stand up sort of started in a big way like 8 years, 7 years ago, and they were small. And then people started doing their own nights. And if you wanted to do comedy, you had to do your own night. So literally, I did my first open mic, and the second time I did it, I was helping produce like a university night because
Oh, cool.
my friend, I made a friend, like a guy who was, he was really bad on that night, and he was like, hey, like, you want to run a night? And I was like, absolutely. And he said some horrible stuff. They later became one of my best friends, and he said lovely stuff. He was, boys, they do some stuff
Yeah,
sometimes in the
they
beginning.
got some growing
Not,
to do.
they've got some growing, and not to be apologetic about it at all, but like sometimes boys say stuff, you're like, oh, you will stop. You will hate that you said that. But they think that they have to be like edgy in order to have a reason to be up there or something. He
Yeah.
was doing some stuff like that. In the end, sweetest man in the world, really sweet. Then became really good friends, and we started running a um, night called the Comedy Underground that was like a free night for students on Monday. And that was awesome because we didn't need to be making money from this. Obviously, we were students, and students would just come and give you like literally €2 for 100 people. But 100 people would come and like try to stick into. It was awesome, and I emceed like my fourth time.
Yeah,
Because that was the good thing
yeah,
about it.
it's such the value of these sort of baby scenes. Like I started in Adelaide, and it meant that it's a baby scene, and you could get a lot of stage time, and you're also around a lot of excitement. It's not so massive that you're just
Totally.
sort of swept up in the storm of it all. Tell me
I
about,
think that happens in London, right? Like that's
yeah,
like the thing that
totally. It's
the open
brutal.
mics, you're like, what? And I have to go like an hour and a half to go and do 3 minutes or somewhere. And here, like you would do 15, and it sucked, but you would
I
do
think
15.
I think it's worth comedians who are in big cities to find, even if they're carving out a smaller space within that city, like how can you play small? Because you're in a snowstorm, you're in a cyclone, and it's really worth sort of finding a little bit of shelter to just sort of have some more quiet stage time, I feel.
And you can make the shelter. It's not so hard to make. It's like people think it's way harder than it is. It's actually, especially if you're like willing to do it for free for a little bit. Like
Hmm.
if you're willing to do it for free, people come.
Yeah, yeah. I think
It's like,
some people they want it to be successful straight away. And if you think
yeah, no
about
chance.
any small business, then you've got to spend some time investing in doing it for free, being an intern,
Because you're
proving
not good
yourself.
at it yet.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
you got to get good at it. And if you can get good at it while the night gets good at it, like it's like you're both growing at the same time. And it's a really, I really recommend just starting a thing.
You're gonna suddenly have a bunch of people turning up in Amsterdam being like, "Hey, can I get a gig?"
They can.
Great. It's gonna be me next year. I need to be getting around Europe more.
Let me know.
Tell me about, like, because it'll be on the audience's mind. How did you end up in Amsterdam? Because in the show on YouTube, and it's such a great special. And I
Oh, thanks
also
so
love that
much.
in the description of the special, you'd say it doesn't start. I don't remember this verbatim, but it's the most unusual YouTube description I've seen before. This doesn't start very good, but it gets better as it goes. Is something to that effect?
Yeah.
What's motivates you describing your own special like that?
Well, because it's true. I'm pretty sure about it. I mean, like I think that like when I watch it, I know what I feel towards what I see about me. And I know when I'm doing it okay or when I'm doing it kind of poorly. And I think in the beginning, it always takes me a little while to get into it. And also like the jokes that I'm the most proud of come later.
Mhm.
Um, and the
Well,
way in
because
which I play.
I think it starts strong, but also I really love it because it starts like a festival show starts, like rather than like when you watch like an American special where it is real flashy and it doesn't feel like you're really in the audience at all.
Right.
This felt way more intimate, which I really love. So I was hooked from the get go. So I'm not here to get you to rewrite that in that description, but I just thought it very, very charming. I thought, okay, there's sort of a level of coquettishness. I'm like, sorry, but
I just feel like that very much. I feel like, oh no, if you just judge me on the first 10 minutes, which I know everybody will. Well, and I also hope that maybe they'll keep watching because they're like, oh, maybe it does get good. And I think like I take more risks and I'm doing stuff that maybe is a bit more interesting later, but it's always hard to start risky. And yeah, especially for your first hour. It's
totally.
so
And
incredible to see
for
something.
the algorithm has to, need to convince people within mere seconds these days. So in the
Yes,
special, you
second.
say, you sort of half jokingly, you meet a guy from Amsterdam and follow him there, and
Yes.
deny that you actually followed him. What's the truth of it? What attracted you to Amsterdam?
The truth of it is that I lived in Miami, Florida, and that wasn't made for me for sure. It was quite like I was studying politics. I went to like a but no, I was studying literature and like I was getting an associate's degree in like this community college, and then it was like supposed to be like a transfer program so that I could go somewhere else. Like the idea was to go to an Ivy League or whatever. Most people do it like that. Some of my friends went to Ivy League, then I applied to the University of Amsterdam amongst like a bunch of other ones. And I applied here because I had heard that it was like a socially responsible country. My dad had always had a girlfriend who was from here, and like when he would do stuff that was laudable, he would always be like, learned it from Patricia, and that was his girlfriend. And I was like, well, she sounds, and she was like, that's what the Dutch are like. They like do stuff for others. And I was like, I would love to live in a place like that. And that I had kind of that in my head. And then the price was so different than the United States University. Like I had like one scholarship I got, and I still had to pay 38K for a year. And I was like, or 2K here because I have the Spanish passport, or 13K if you don't have like which is like still a humongous difference.
Hmm.
And I was like, well, maybe I just go somewhere and then see what I'm like if I go somewhere where I don't know absolutely anybody. Because I was 21 and the other university was in Los Angeles where my sister was, and I already knew kind of like I would be the same version of myself in Miami if I went to LA because same vibe, same like values that I don't care about but like grew up with. So I have close to my heart in a way that I squish down, but I have them. And it was just like maybe if I go somewhere, I'll do something that yeah, I don't think I would have started stand up for maybe, I don't know if I would have gotten there,
It's a sort of
It
real
was
sliding doors type situation.
huge for me, like in the sense that like I got here and I didn't know anyone. And when someone told me do stand up, I was like, well, maybe. And no, that wouldn't have just ever gone into my head before because it just didn't fit with the person that I thought that I was.
Yeah,
And then
so
here
I
I didn't
wonder what
know.
LA Lara would have been like.
I don't like
What
her. Don't care about her. Don't want to think about her.
in the sort of multiverse of your life that you meet her and you're like, yeah, let's not hang out.
I don't think so. I think let's not hang out so much. I mean, I empathize with a lot of stuff, but I still feel like I don't know. I mean, my family's not stupid, so it's not that I think I would get caught up in stuff that is only stupid. Like I think I have some level of like, yeah, that I see things for what they are, but I don't know how much of that was like going away and you know feeling like, huh, I can really build whatever.
And
So
just
what is
getting
that?
that perspective. I mean, this is the benefit of so many Australians who take a gap year and go on holiday and do their European backpacking thing and go, oh, okay, there's a whole world out there. And I think that's very healthy
Yeah,
for the North Americans of the world as well.
totally. It feels like, oh, I could do, you see that other people are doing stuff that is just really different. And you're like, oh, I don't have to do any of this stuff that I thought I had to do. I can do
Yeah,
anything.
that makes sense.
I could do stand-up comedy.
Imagine. I want to go to my mailbag. So one of my Comedy Writers Group members is a deaf comedian, and so they were stoked. They were, and I said, "Do you have any questions?" And they were stoked to have some questions
That's
for
so
you,
cool.
which is delightful. Oh, here's a good question. Winning the 2022, because they wrote me a bunch, so we'll see what
Oh,
we can we can see what we can
thank
do.
you so much. That's so nice.
So this is from Nicole, and she says, winning the 2022 Edinburgh Comedy Award for Best Newcomer is huge. How has that experience impacted your career, especially as a deaf and Latino comedian in a field that's often dominated by hearing performers?
It
Tell me
is
about that.
dominated. Um, I am so glad that happened. Can't believe how glad I am that that happened. That was like, it was also, I think a lot of times, I think the hardest thing about comedy is that you have to push yourself, even if you don't necessarily know. I think a lot of us have like a little inkling, like, maybe I'm good at this. And then you have like, you go and you do a gig and you're like, oh, I'm very good at this. And you go and do a gig and you're like, oh, I never knew that I could be so bad at this. And it feels like so aggressively big and so aggressively small all of the time. And I think that like I didn't enjoy doing the show in Edinburgh because I'm very self-critical and like I um I think we all are, of course. Like, I think that's a big part of it. Like, I just didn't know that what if I was saying the stuff that was the right stuff to say, and I was saying it again and again, and that really just gets in your head because you're like, I don't know that I believe all this stuff, or I don't know that that this is the stuff that I want to stand by, and I have to repeat it every day at 3:20. I just think it was like a lot of that. And then when I won that, which I didn't expect at all, like I kind of expected to get nominated because I had nice reviews and I was like, maybe, like I don't, maybe I will, but I did not expect to win it at all. So it's with some fucking shows that were incredible, like no chance. But they were. I think that it was also. I think that one's an interesting one because it's about a little bit like, hey, we feel like you might need this push. I think that's how it is. Like we believe in what you're doing, not that you were doing something that was incredible already. I think that's what that award is ideally about potential really. And the cool part about that, and also like I had an agent by that time, my agent was like, you this just means that we trust you, like you can do whatever you think is funny now.
It's an
And
award for encouragement. Is that what you're saying?
I am saying that.
And do you feel encouraged, like as someone who's very self-critical? Do you feel like, oh, okay, maybe I am part of this gang?
Very much like it was like a door opening about because you also there's always that thing like you watch comics and a lot of times what you think is the funniest thing isn't really what you're doing because you can't. Ira Glass says that about like if you're a person with good taste, your taste will never match up to the thing that you're doing, and so you're always gonna feel like. And I mean, like I would like to think that I've watched so much comedy, and with so many Edinburghs also, like it you are building a repertoire of things that you know you love, and a lot of times you do the thing that you do, and you're like, I don't love the thing that I do. But it was like, you have to take a big risk to do something that you might love, which is you have to be a little crazy sometimes if what you love is crazy. And I love crazy stuff. And it's so, I don't know that I would have done it. Like, I don't know that I would have done it so fast, at least. Maybe I would have done it eventually. But like, in this, my little tiny wet show baptism is like so much weirder than my first hour. Like the little glimpses of stuff that I had that was weird in my first hour, like I really got to be inside of that. I'm moving so much more. I like, and of course, why wouldn't I move? The body's a huge instrument that we have up there. And like the more that you move, it's like being aware that like, it's like if someone told me you're funny for the first time, it was like that. It was like, oh, well then look at this. What about this? And that felt like, oh, all of a sudden yeah, it was like a playground that I didn't have, that like I was really trying to be like, please let this be a playground, please, please, please. And then it was like, hey, it is a playground. Awesome. Let's go. Was sort of the vibe.
That makes a lot of sense. And I think when the Ira Glass quote is a really fascinating one, but it's also sort of when you like, it's not only tasting, it's feeling like I've got so much potential. I've got so much potential. I think I've got a masterpiece up my sleeve. And I know that this show isn't my masterpiece yet. So if you're to reward this, I don't know if you guys even know what you're doing. But you're totally right. They can sniff it, and the experts they've seen it, and they've seen it before, and they can go, this kid's got it. This kid's got something here, and we got to reward her for it.
That was I think also like those awards are very political, and like you always see stuff that you're like, oh, I don't know that I would have given that award to that person. I think like, which is rude to say.
Let's name some names.
No chance, not me. But these things that you're like, oh, you watch all the shows that have been nominated, and you're like, oh, the idea is that's interesting that that ends up happening that way, and it's mostly interesting rather than like, oh, they fucking got it. Like it's about a lot of other stuff. To the Latina hard of hearing question, like that is a big part of like the thing is like it is about who they nominated the year before and who like got it the year before, and it's always in contrast to that, and those things work in a way that we will never understand, and I don't think that that's what we should aspire to. I think even like, yeah, just doing it is a big part of it. I don't, it's so small the chance and like so annoying to hear from me who I got it, but I did like, it was really important in the sense that it was like it told me I could, but I think that I would have gotten there if I would have just kept going as well. But it just would have taken me a little bit longer because I think that it's a game of approval. Like, and
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately, that's one of the things that we're seeking in smaller and big terms. Um, yeah, and I think well, that's what the internet's so awesome for, because you can get it sometimes there if you keep posting in there or whatever.
Can
But
we talk
the
please finish your
yeah,
thought.
no, the Latina hard of hearing thing, I feel like it. Um, I think that one of the things that was like I did it because I that show I did it because everybody was asking me about that, like from when I started. Like that was like they're like, oh well, that's your unique selling point. It's this. And I kind of wanted to get that out of the way because I think it's not necessarily, but it's outward in the unique selling point. And I think um not that like I don't know, I just think like it's not the main thing that's interesting about me, hopefully. But it's a combination of things that make people want to look at me, and I need any excuse for anyone to look at me because I want to be doing some stuff.
And
And
this
so
is,
I think that
yeah,
that's,
totally. This is exactly the exciting sort of subject matter that I like, which is identity type stuff. To say in the title of this show is my
yeah,
identity in air quotes, because you know you're diluting it to three things. And then you're also telling the audience, so if that's what you might be interested in, this might be the show for you. You know what you're going to be getting. Here's three things about me.
yeah. I mean, I did it. It was, for me, it was a little bit like I wanted to be ironic about it. And I mean, I know that also it's both things. Like it really is that, and it also isn't that. And I
It
mean,
certainly has like a punk rock element to it as well, I feel.
I would hope. Hey, I would hope. But to hope it's punk rock, I don't know if that's punk rock. But I do think that like I wanted to be a little bit like, okay, fine, you know, like a bit like eh. And then I can do whatever. Like I can take that wherever. But I don't know that like I don't know. I was trying to cram in a lot of stuff that I cared about.
Tell me, like, so how much does these things sort of inform your identity? Because it is, for lack of a better term, sort of a trendy thing in comedy these days to go, oh, that's the person that talks about being having ADHD. This is the person that talks a lot about this particular, you know, identity informs a lot. That race, culture. I'm a queer comic. I talk about my cultural experience. I talk about this. I talk about that. Are you someone that's now, I've been there, done that? Or do you think it will continue to inform? Or do you think that will inform the subtext rather than the actual text? Like, this is something that you happen to be, but my show is about something else entirely. Is that sort of where you're headed?
I think yeah, the I think I everything will always be informed by the way that I see the world. And I think that's what's interesting about comedians. Comedians should try to look at stuff in the way that they can look at stuff and not try and see, oh, well, let me see if I can get, I mean, there's no point to that. It's always going to be informed by the way that the world sees you and what you put out there and like what you are. But also like the truth is that the labels aren't so helpful after once you got in them. Like the idea is get a label so that you can look inside of it and see, at least I think, like the boundaries of a label. That's not so useful for me. Like I'm not hard of hearing. I'm hard of hearing, so I hear. I just can't, it's not clear for me. I hear muffled, which sucks. And it means I just don't fucking know what's being said, but I know that someone's talking to me. um and so like there's moments where I feel really hard of hearing, and there's moments where I feel kind of fine, like I'm wearing my hearing aids and I'm in groups and it's fine. And I don't think that everything I see is through that lens. I don't think it's so helpful because it kind of boxes me into a thing that I don't really necessarily need in order to look at the world. Like I can look at the world through a lot of different things. I think that's when identity stuff is like it separates us from others instead of bringing us together. And ideally, the comedy part of it would bring us closer, connect with people, so that you can see, oh, okay, these are kind of the boundaries, but look at this. Me and this Russian 47-year-old man are having a great time laughing at the same things. It's like, is it so much about me being a Latina girl, or is it really about my sensibility and my sense of humor? You know? And I think that sometimes it's the excuse to start talking, because you need something to start talking. And I think that that's the perfect way to start from, because what's the point of doing a joke that anybody else could do? I don't care so much about that. I think for me, it's mainly about, like, to the point of like, what is the thing that informs my next shows? I'm trying to be honest. Like, that's the thing that I'm trying to be the most. I care about being honest, and I think whatever is honest from me is going to go through the way that I see the world, and the way that I see the world is impacted by the fact that I'm a Latina, hard of hearing girl. But um really, what I wanted to say something, I'm like, that's something I believe, which was the point of my last show, and hopefully will be the point of my next show. To be silly in the way that I am silly, and be honest in the way that only I can be honest. That I care about.
So beautifully said, and like I want the listener to know, like I'm just like leaning in, sort of like one of the little rascals in terms of just enjoying hearing what you had to say about this, because I think it's really, really fascinating, and I think it gives a lot of people permission, I hope, to both inform their work, but also liberate themselves, and also some things are just don't even need to be said. Like we don't I've always need to start a sentence with, as a blank, I see the world this way. We're watching you, we're seeing you, and but I also love that way of going, oh, this is a beautiful way in to me. Here's my lens, audience. But then from then on, I'm going to do my thing. I want to talk about the idea of, we talked about politics, and activism informs the special, in that there's a call to action in terms of, we got to do something about climate change. And I'd really like to, because I've been watching stuff about this hurricane lately, and I watched this climate scientist talk about it, and I went, oh my God, 30 to 50 years of storms. I'm getting nervous, but
Yeah, of
I
course.
want that to segue into accessibility. Does accessibility does your activism sort of sit there as well? How much does accessibility inform performance with yours? Is that not a high priority when it comes to, maybe that's unfair language to use. How much does accessibility inform performance, and thinking about how can I bring this to the most people?
Yeah, it's so interesting that, like, that's such a question. I totally think about that also, because I think that there is a moment, I think I'm entering the moment in my, like, comedy career where I am thinking a lot about, like, finding the people who like me for, which is different than accessibility, but in reality, like, I want it to get out to the most people, so that it can, so the people that like it can end up coming back. But a lot of times, to the most people sounds like to everyone, and I don't know. It's always a thing that I always think about. Like, when I do gigs here, I do gigs sometimes to, like, big audiences that just come in, like, they're tourists, or they don't care about comedy necessarily, or like, and then I don't care about them so much, because if you don't care about comedy so much, I don't care about you so much in terms of giving you my comedy,
Don't you
because
know who
it's
I
just
am?
no chance, no chance. Don't you know who I am? Just in terms of, like, you won't even have thought about this yet. So then we all start a little bit, and then it's a little bit, because I want to feel like we all get to fly with our jokes. Like, not that we all have to say, "Hey, please, can we please just do this one joke because we think it's funny, because actually we've been working." Like the and a lot of times with nights where you do stuff for, like, just everyone who doesn't really care, they're just there, they're trying to have a night out, they're like having a drink, and they don't care so much about it. I guess it's a snobby thing to say, but, like, I just, like, I'm like, well, hey, what if we all thought maybe something really special can happen today? That's my ideal audience, but it feels like I do want to. I think that doesn't even answer the accessibility thing at all. It just
No,
feels
no,
like
no. I
the
love to
question.
follow a thread. I love to follow a shiny thing as well.
But with the accessibility thing, I mean, for me, it's like trying to, the online special was like that. I wanted that. No, nobody asked me to record that. Um, but I did kind of, like, I feel like the way in which I can get me out to the most people is to put that up on YouTube and put an hour up, and because the clips don't really do justice to the energy that I hope I can create in an hour, and, like, the feeling that I hope I can create in an hour. I feel like if you spend an hour with someone, you're much more likely to feel anything toward them than if you see a little clip of them. And I think like there's accessibility in terms of like getting it out there to the most people, and then there's also accessibility in terms of like, are venues accessible, and like, can people get into the venues? I think like that does depend a lot of time on the venues. I do stuff like captioning my shows. I always have 2 caption shows in every run that I do, because that's something that I didn't know it even existed, and like can change an like can make people that would have never gone to comedy go to comedy, and that's so incredible. And also like I've never been to a caption show, but like I know that if I were in a caption show, I'd be able to lean back in my chair, which is a thing I never goddamn do. I'm always leaning forward because I'd have to make so much effort in participating, and I love to do the effort because that's my vibe. But I do also notice the moment when you like, oh, lean back, never, and it's the feeling that I can do when there's captions. And it's something I only realized by seeing the way that people watch it when I'm doing it. With captions, but it does.
And you're finding that there are deaf and hard of hearing people coming along to these shows, because one thing that happens to very junior comedians when they're starting out is they see that box on the registration of like, are you going to do an accessible show? And they're like, I don't even know if anyone's coming to this show at all.
Oh, that is so. Yeah, I think that all of the time. I think about that all the time, like especially when they like some places will subsidize it, and some places are like, hey, if you want to do a caption show, it's out of pocket, and that sucks, of course. But of course, there are a million things that are important in a comedy festival. People, the arts are barely funded. It's really hard to get shit going, and I appreciate the fact that it's even going at all. And I had a lot of really interesting experiences with the accessibility thing, because I brought like the first time I did it in Melbourne, I got a captioner that was in Brisbane, and he was doing it through Zoom, and then he was captioning like on. It was bad, of course. It was slow. And then that meant that it alienated everyone, because also, and especially the people who were deaf or hard of hearing, then they were like brought to a place to then be like struggling. Like that sucks. And it felt awful. And I got emails about it and like did a whole thing for the next year, tried to get it better. But they wrote an article about it on The Guardian, like about like how to caption, and I got interviewed for it. And like that one's a really interesting, I send it whenever I'm doing, because Rachel Healy, this journalist, she like really went into like, what should we do or what shouldn't we do? And so that already exists online, which can be looked up. But I also think that when you're starting, and this, I feel even a little bit like I shouldn't necessarily say this, but I do believe that that's not the thing that you need to worry about right now, because you will find your audience slowly, and people who are hard of hearing, like, and I'm not a part of huge hard of hearing communities, but like there will be slowly the bigger acts need to start doing that, and that needs to trickle down where the money is, because it's hard to get funding for these things, and that's something that we should be worried about getting funding for. But there are so many things that obstacleize question mark.
It's a good word. I like it.
So many things that obstacleize your, I don't know if that's the word. So many things that obstacleize your getting started in doing, like, there are so many excuses not to do comedy. You don't need that one to be one. Just do it as much as you can. And when you have a name for yourself, or when you have venues that are like, hey, what do you need? There you can put your, but like, you're not going to not do a gig because it's, I mean, unless you have thousands of gigs to pick from, but just because the gig doesn't allow for that stuff, unless the accessibility things are for you, of course, then I think it's important to say, but I think for like, that's not something you need to worry about so much, and you will get to worry about it and keep that, that is important. Of course it's important, and you will have the chance to do that. And when I have big shows, like when 200 people come watch me, I will have something that will, I mean, I'm going to figure it out for myself, and it's important, and I know it, but I also think like it can't come at odds with finding what your comedic voice is, and like, and it shouldn't, like it shouldn't clash with that. It shouldn't be a reason for you not to keep doing it if you're finding something, but you're like, oh, but there's no money to caption it. You will, I think.
Yeah, no, I think that's well said, because we're also in a situation where there are just very few gigs that are available. Sometimes, like, well, I got to take this gig in this spot, but I guess it's where one's priorities lie. Let's talk about the other side of things, because this is another question from Nicole, which I think is a good one. She says, "What advice would you give to young deaf comedians?" And she says, particularly in Australia, I don't know how much insight you might have. She says, where the deaf community is vibrant, but still finding a greater platform in mainstream media. And I should flag, Nicole, as you probably can tell, very passionate about this subject matter. So, yeah, is there any advice that you would give to a young deaf comedian?
I mean, I'm not actually deaf. I'm hard of hearing. So I'm not, I am always trying to get myself, I mean, I'm learning sign language, but I'm not trying to get myself in. It's always a bit of an in-between thing for me, because I think people who are hard of hearing, like, we're always trying to placate to be part of like the hearing community, because um I don't really know why, but it feels easier. There's a bigger pool of people, and so I don't know that I would be the person that would give good advice to this. I think, especially like if you're deaf and you sign, I know that there's groups of people, because I had BS Auslan interpreters and like also four of my shows in this year, two of my shows in the last year. So it's growing and it's better. And I know that there's people who go and watch it, and like there's a community of people who come back. Um I think it's like find the people. I think that for comedy in general, like find the people that are doing the thing that you like to do and like stick with them, because it's lonely if not, and there's no reason for it to need to be lonely because everybody's alone at the same time trying to find a space in it. So I think it's like find the people that like the same thing that you do and build something. I would say the same thing that I would say to hearing people. Like I would say like try to build a community of people that want to do the thing that you're doing. Build a night maybe where people do comedy in Auslan. Like that would be fucking incredible. And
Really
that
would.
people would have a place to go. And then it makes for more people to be interested in it. And it is really interesting. People do that all the time. They do queer nights, women nights, whatever, deaf night. Why not?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think that's a great. I think that's great advice. I think that's great advice, and I think and it's fascinating too to learn about the sort of different communities and to see the sort of this goes again into the sort of identity thing and the uninformed like myself have to sort of be proudly ignorant and go, tell me about this stuff. What's this and what's that? So I think that's really
Yeah.
fascinating, and I think our listeners will get a lot out of that as well. As we
Hopefully.
sort of get towards the tail end of this interview, I want to talk about what's ahead. So you've got, tell me a little bit about the show that's in the works, so that we're getting that the silliest version of you so far. But also, I saw something online recently, also some acting work as well. You're finally following in your mother's footsteps.
I don't I find it really fun. Unfortunately, I do find it fun as hell. I did do a blap for comedy for Channel 4. Like I acted in a blap, and it was a little bit dramatic also, and it was really fun to do. I loved it, and the writer was so funny, and I auditioned and I did it while I was in Melbourne. Um and then I got a call back, and then I got another call back, and then I got the blap, and it was like a 15-minute pilot. And I mean, of course, I'm writing my own series, as is every single person you ever
Of
meet.
course,
Ev
of course.
Yeah, and you must try. I think you must try. And I would be acting in that as well. So I'm really happy to get my feet wet. I'm also gonna do Sam Campbell, Australian. He's doing his
Mhm.
series, and it starts filming, and I'm doing a small character in that. So that's I am doing teeny acting stuff in the next year or so, which I'm really excited about. I think that a lot of the stand-up stuff is like you are finding a way to be exactly yourself on stage, which is not so different, from the acting thing. Like that's why stand-ups are good actors, because you have found the way to bring your emotions that you feel all of the time and recreate them on the stage for people. And that's acting, baby. That really is that.
And do you
And in
think
a way,
this is gonna lead to your character coming back from the dead on the old telenovela as well?
imagine that. No, that character had nothing going for her. She had a
How did they
shitty
die
life.
in the TV show?
A car accident.
Uh,
Blood capsules on my forehead. Had to smack my head against the car, and then the blood would drip.
oh
Dead.
wow, you got to die on camera. That's good because you don't want those things where like you just died off camera and you're like, oh yeah, she's not
No.
around anymore.
Yeah, no, that was awesome for me. I don't have so many memories about that. I think my next show is gonna be called um I don't know yet, but this is something I'm trying out. I think it's gonna be called Was My Childhood Traumatic, or Why Don't I Have Any Memory?
Yeah,
I
I
think
mean,
that's
there's something in that. There's something in that.
there's something in
I mean,
that.
the listeners may have figured it out that maybe that head impact from this pretend car accident might have been what did it to you.
I don't have any memories from even being like 11. And I'm pretty sure I was.
Well, I'm saying that the car accident, you know, their
That
amnesia
was
is
15.
retrospective, you know. Yeah, but then
Oh,
all the yeah, exactly. Then everything before, you know, you've lost it.
oh no. Just for TV and for cheap one too.
I'm imagining the ending of your show as this blood starts going down your forehead and you're flashing back to that moment.
Hey, well maybe. I don't say no to any idea. I run. That's great. Thank you.
And
Yeah, I think
where is it in development at the moment, this new show?
in my head right now,
Mhm.
I have just had this idea 2 days ago. And I've
Mhm.
been saying it to everybody I know because that's what I'm like when I have one idea. I'm doing like I think I'm gonna do a little bit more. A clown gave me advice, and I love clowns. I live for them. Doing a clown workshop was the best thing I ever did for my comedy life and in relation to anything. I've never been felt so like punched and cracked to the point where I was like, oh, this is the truth. I always think everything's the truth, but this I think is the real truth. Like I think comedy is the truth, but I think like clowning, that's the way into the truth. Um
That's
I'm so
beautiful.
crazy. Well, that's what I think. And I think that like I did these clown workshops and I noticed that it was like there's so much about like you the jokes are the excuse, to be up there and to be able to play. And once you find that out, like the playfulness has space. Because a lot of times, like I'm so fast, I'm always going fast. I'm trying to say a bunch of shit and like trying to get you to think that I'm smart. Like that's so important for me. And it's starting to get less and less important the more that I notice that it's about playing and about like being the fool, not this. I'm not there to tell you what's funny. We're there to discover it together, ideally. And that if you like something or you don't like something, like that's interesting. It's not something for me to scold you about. Like that's for me to be like curious about, oh, what's this audience like? And that's something that is a learning process that you have to be feeling. It's easy to say, and I think it's like you have to remind yourself, like, this is a new audience hearing the thing for the first time. What do they think about this? Not they better fucking laugh at me. Like that's not the way to. I mean, for me at least, I don't think that that's the healthiest thing because you're just gonna be pissed instead of being like. And curiosity, I think, is the solution to that. And I think in terms of like clowning, like the clown is open, and that's part of the world of clown is like the eyes look. The eyes don't glaze. And so many comics' eyes are glazing. Stop fucking glazing. Look at these goddamn people. Like it's so it's just something that can feed you for so much longer. And I want to do this for the rest of my life. I don't want to do this for only a little bit. So yeah, I think that seeing clowns and seeing how they're open and like that's something I really would like to bring into. I'm trying. I'm really trying. And my second show, I think that's a lot more there. And like I think for my third show, I want to do a lot more of like improv stuff that can find like not to. I have a lot of stuff that I want to be talking about, but to give space to between my punchline and my setup, there is some room for me to play. And that's one of the ideas that I'm giving myself right now. I'm not sure that I'll be able to do it. I mean, I will try. And you have to be comfortable, of course. And what a hard thing to do. I think getting comfortable is the toughest thing. But yesterday I was talking to a new comic and they were like, it's just I'm so funny on with my friends, they were saying, and like it just feels like stand-up is like right, take out all the fun out of it. And I just like it feels like it sucks, like it's just so much harder than I thought it would be. And I think that I'm like I love to riff, but I can't connect those two. And I think that if you are good at being funny with your friends and then you start stand up and you find it hard, I think that you can trust that you will get comfortable to be the person that you are with your friends on the stage, but it will just take a couple of years, which sucks ass that it's years. But if you work on it, you will find that the person that you were with your friends, that you keep being with your friends, will show up on the stage. It's just about putting in the time.
Oh my
That's what
goodness.
I would say.
I could listen to you for hours because
Oh,
you are a person right after my own heart because I too get so annoyed when comedians turn on the crowd because you go, hey man, you and I say man deliberately for the most part is someone who is not sensitive to us at all. So often when someone goes, oh, you didn't like that at all, or you guys didn't get that, or you hated that, or that was too dark, I'm there going, nah, man, I just didn't think it was that funny, and you're not really with us right now at all. And the more that you keep telling us how much we're not enjoying your show, the more I am believing it. So what if you're a bit more sensitive to us? What if you were with us right now? So
It's
I'm
so
a big
hard, of
advocate.
course. That is so hard though, because like you did work, you are bringing something that you find precious. But that's the thing about the clown also. The clown brings something precious and beautiful and thinks that it's beautiful and presents it to you with all they can't believe they get to share this with you. And then you hate it. And then they have to die in front of you. And then in the return, that is where the comedy happened. That's where the joy happened. And like to be aware that it is a process and not a joke, because it's not about the gag, it's about the gig. You know what I mean? And that's something I just said, and it sounded good because gag and gig sounds
I
similar.
mean, it sounded like it was ripped right out of a book. I think it's quite good. It's not
Hey.
about the gag, it's about the gig.
Yeah,
And
I think it really is.
and it's about the generosity, I think, and that's this. It's a generous spirit of like, I'm giving this, and I can't believe that we are here inhabiting the same space, getting to share this moment, just like right now, rather than it being like, hey, it's a privilege that you guys are here listening to me. So if you guys don't give me enough, I'm gonna be pissed. It's like, come
And
on,
that's
man.
obviously fucking from insecurity. They don't think it's a privilege. They're scared as shit. And like, we can tell you're scared of shit. But if you are open about the fact that you're scared of shit, everyone is scared of shit. There's a mob in front of you. Let's be honest. That could be really scary. But I think that like and I think it's also everybody has different comedy personas. You know, as you go on stage, some people are deadpan. So what's the version of deadpan that's excited about sharing? Like that's some things for you to discover, you know? It's not that you can't be both. You can. But there is something about like the twinkle in your eye and the joy that I think is really necessary for me to want to look at you. Like if you don't care about what you're doing, I don't care about what you're doing.
Yeah, make me care. Make me care.
Totally. And all you have to do is be a little excited. That's it.
Yeah. Can you just give me something? You know, you're the parent taking their kid out on to Disneyland, going, "Can you look like you're having a good time, please? Please look
You
like you're
wanted
having
to
a
come
good
here.
time."
You worked really hard to come here. Bake sales. What are you talking about? Totally.
Hey, thank you so much for making the time this morning. I really, really appreciate it. But for people that are the uninitiated, where can they find your special, and where can they find more of you on the internet?
Thank you so much. You can please find my special on YouTube. It's called GRL/LATNX /DEF. Girl Latin Deaf, but spelled like that. And if you just look up Lara Ricote, it'll show up. And then my Instagram is also just my name. So you can find stuff there. And hopefully I'll be back in Australia. I don't know if next year because I'm not writing the show quick enough, but maybe the year after that. And I would love it if they came to my show.
We always love it when you visit.
Thank you. Are you in Adelaide?
No, I started in Adelaide and then I moved to Sydney for 10 years and now I live in Melbourne. So I'm getting around.
Nice.
And then I got my eyes set on the world.
Amazing.
I'm coming for the world.
That's awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you so
on setting
much.
your eyes.
But yeah, I'm gonna come visit your neck of the woods, so I'll be certain to hit you up.